Welcome back, Warriors. Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and back with the 1% Club. I hope you guys are doing well. And we just finished one on courage, even during flatlining. And this one we're going to focus on is going to be called the Me Generation. I have a lot of students over the years. I started teaching as a graduate student in 1979, many years ago, right? Talking about, what was it, 1979, let's say maybe I'll bump it up to 82, 83. I'm sorry, I was in undergraduate school in 79, but 82, 83. So you're talking about, let's see, as many years ago. So 17 plus 21, so almost 38 years ago. And so I've seen a lot of different things, from baby boomers to different kind of X generation, Y generation, lots of different types of people come through. And what I've noticed is that as you look at the newer generations, the younger generations, everything has kind of moved from that 60s, late 60s, early 70s type of rebellion against the establishment to this me generation. I remember that Pepsi-Cola had a commercial advertising talking about the new generation, and there were songs called My Way and all these type of things. And so there's just this idea that you should be not held down by rules, and to expand and to be the person you want to be. And all that is good in a certain way, right? You want to be your own person. You don't want to have to follow orders and always be under the thumb of anything, governments or anybody else. And so that's what happened. And in history, there's always that 60, 70-year-old period of time where you go from being very liberal to very conservative. And I think we're moving back to the conservative, because we were very conservative back in the 50s. And that started moving away, and now people wanted to break away from that. And they're moving to being more liberal, which created this whole me generation. And because of that, everybody started thinking for themselves. And as the years have gone by now, 20, 30, 40 years, the result of that is you have a lot of younger people who basically are thinking only for themselves. And they don't think anything wrong with this because they've seen generations of this before them. And that's why places that have had rules and mores and rules and laws, like the religions and the governments, have struggled, because people want to do their own thing. Now, if you think about this logically, my friends, if everybody's doing their own thing, right, the good thing about that is people can be free, which is very important. Epictetus said that freedom is the most important thing that you can have. But freedom comes with responsibility. And what's happening is, I think people are losing that. They're losing that idea that they need to be responsible. And this is why you're seeing a backlash of people now who are basically saying, we need some accountability. And you could talk about the accountability that's happening in all the other realms of life there that I don't need to mention here. But let's talk about one sense of accountability that we have to focus on, and that's ourselves. And the me generation has created a lot of people who don't take accountability, males and females, everybody included. And the big problem with that is that males are not basically saying, this is my responsibility, my actions affect other people. And females are doing the same thing. Now, you see it a lot with males and females, because as they date, you're having a bunch of people out there called chads, who basically don't have a lot of caring about the people they're sleeping with, because they're moving on. And then you have people who are females who are hitting the wall at 30 years old and realizing all this body count now hurts them, and no one wants to deal with someone who they think is kind of like damaged goods, right? That's because everybody was so free and easy, they felt like there was no consequences of these behaviors. And we talked about this with the sports participation. There's a huge amount of people who feel spoiled or entitled because they came from families or people who taught them that they could do anything they want to do and they were okay doing that. The real answer, my friends, and we talk about this in any kind of biblical text you want to look at, any kind of religious text you want to look at, is the fact that you are responsible and your actions do affect other people, right? You can't just go ahead and have intercourse with somebody without having some effect. The effect could be diseases, could be a child, it could be emotional trauma. You can't tell me that people who have multiple body counts are not affected. It's almost like when you look in their eyes, they have no soul. Why would you? Because you're sleeping with so many people, it doesn't make a difference anymore. Nothing means anything. And that's what happens. Nothing means anything, and you become like a zombie walking around, which is what we have. We have a lot of zombies walking around, people losing energy, being sucked dry, and have no life inside of them. This call comes from this idea that people can do anything they want to do. And this is that me generation. So, like Spider-Man, and I always go back to Spider-Man's quote, right, in that movie, with great power comes great responsibility. I think Lord Acton said this. He said, power is great, but corrupt people can make power great too. And great power corrupts. So great power can be effective or it can corrupt. And corruptness is a part of what we see all the time. People are using power in ways they shouldn't. And I think that's the whole key to it. You see this all the time. You watch a lot of crazy things on the internet, and you see people who are, doing anything they want to do. I mean, you've seen people saying some nasty things on there. You've seen people who just kind of, they have half their no clothes on, and they're doing all kinds of crazy things, and they think it's got no ramifications. Okay, if you're working in the world of business and you see this stuff, who's going to hire somebody who has this type of mentality? And I think that when you see this kind of stuff, you realize that the values of a person becomes increasingly important. And this is why when you look at any kind of person you're going to be with, or anybody you want to spend some time with, look at their value system. Look at who they are. This is why having intercourse, intimacy right away is not, in my opinion, a good idea. Wait to find out more about this person. It's almost like looking at this person without their makeup on. Who is this person that you're dealing with? This person that's the real person. Who's this person you're talking with? Are they going to be someone who's going to be helpful to you in the goals you're trying to achieve? Or are they going to be somebody who's going to hold you back? We've talked about how a lot of women and men look at the world now. And it's changed over the last 40, 50 years because of the me generation thing. This empowerment type of thing. And of course, abuse and those things are very bad. But on the other extreme, you don't want people to not have relationships. And I think people are afraid of having long-term relationships to even get to know people because of all the things that we're seeing out there, with people only caring about themselves, not caring about each other. And as a result of that, relationships are very bad. People are even afraid to have relationships. And now you're seeing a lot of marriages breaking up. No one's even getting married. And so what is that end result in our society? Well, when you look at those type of things, you're looking at a real chasm, different things in society. It's going to break up the whole society, right? There's going to be a huge divide. Now, the good news to me is that I think the country is coming back in many ways and realizing the folly of their ways with a lot of the stuff we've been taught and teaching people about being very liberal on things with their body. And I think that's going to change things, and people are going to become very conservative. And this whole rise of retention, brahmacharya, sophism, is a good example in this 1% club, which is going to increase to 2%, 5%, and you're going to see a lot more people who are going to come to the realization this is what we need to do. And I think when you look at this in long term, you realize that what is starting now is just another one of those kind of revolutions and saying we need to not give away our energy freely like that. We need to be careful, conserve our energy, and make sure that we're using it in the right purpose that God intended, and that's to procreate, and not to just give it away for free. Okay? So when you look at the me generation, it was bound to happen. If you look at the history of the 40s, and we went through a war, we got a lot of prosperity in the 40s and early 50s, but then it got to the point where there was a lot of conservatism and people with a lot of rules and establishment, and you knew that was eventually going to disrupt. And with Vietnam, a lot of that stuff exploded. But that's going to be once again a 50, 60 year type of thing, right? We went from the 1910, 1920 type of thing all the way to the 1960s, and that 1970s changed, right? By 20s to the 70s, right? Then it became a lot more conservative after the Wall Street crash in 1929 and things like that, because we went through depression and things like that. So if you know the history, you know that every 40, 50 years, things change. Because it gets to the point where people become so much one way or the other and so exaggerated that they have to go back. And now we're in a mode where people are so much liberal when it comes to sex and their bodies and everything that they're moving back the other way. And people are going to be, once again, using retention, being a lot more cautious, not getting in positions where they could get diseases and children and things that are not what they want at the moment. Okay? And that's the key to it. So this me generation, guys, be prepared. For some of us older people, we know what that's been through. But for some of younger people that were born in their 20s and 30s, you're kind of right in the middle of that. Realize what had happened, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of information on what I think is going to happen as we move towards the next 10 years. Okay? All right, so another good question, and thanks to my students for this one, and we'll see you next time. Until then, battle on.